Well, I want to say hello to everyone this evening, or wherever you're at. Um, we're just about to begin our webinar for the GMS application regarding our references. And the specific title for this webinar is How to Write a Reference. We're looking to share some good information for you all who are going to be completing a reference for your students who are going to be applying for the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. So as with any job application, this particular scholarship program is looking for 2 references to support and write about the students that are applying. This is both to provide some good background on the student and give a good recommendation or nomination for those applying. It gives the application scholarship review folks a good idea of what exactly the student's doing from the nominator and recommender perspective, and it adds totally and wholly to the student's application as a whole. So while we do take in a variety of components into account, their academics, their leadership, and their community service activities into account in their application, the nominator and recommender portion is crucial to the student's review and scoring thereof. So again, we want to first of all just share with you that your part in this application process is very important. So just wanted to share with you that we'll be taking some time here to share again information about the scholarship from the nominator and recommender perspective. We also want to share some just a brief amount of information for the nomination process for your students, and hopefully give you some good tidbits on the background there as well. We'll be filling some questions that you might be able to submit in the YouTube channel under the comment section. So should you have any of those questions, feel free to pose them there, and we'll be happy to review those at the end of the webinar or as we're going through it, and then answer them in real time. So again, if you have questions, feel free to provide them in the comment section in the YouTube channel. So to start out with some introductions, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Gabriel Bell. For those of you that may have been on the earlier webinar, we introduced ourselves, but we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves again for those of you that are tuning in for the first time. So my name is Gabriel. I'm the Campus Engagement Manager for the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. I cover the Southwest region, which is headquartered here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I've currently completed my 4th year on deck here with the scholarship program, and have completed quite some time in our operations side as well as academic support. So I have both helped out nominees who are applying for the scholarship, provided workshops across the country to high school students, as well as counseled our current scholars from the point of their freshman year all the way through to their doctoral program. And I've helped them with the operations side of the scholarship, as well as talk to them about our graduate opportunities and how to apply for grad school. So I have a little bit of experience from there, as well as my personal experience as a Gates Scholar. I was a recipient of the scholarship in 2002. So me and my twin brother were fortunate enough to receive the scholarship and study and earn a degree in mathematics from Oklahoma Baptist University in Shawnee, Oklahoma. So I'm currently been on deck here at AIGCS, and my twin brother has been teaching mathematics at Riverside Indian School. So anyway, I'm particularly excited to talk about the scholarship and share as much information as I can to allow you and your students the most competitive application submission, so that your students can experience the same that I did. But that's me, Gabriel Bell. I am Cheyenne Arapaho. I'm from the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe in Western Oklahoma. I'm also part Guamanian and share that experience as well. But I'll turn it over to Josh Lucio, who will introduce himself.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Lucio. I am the academic advisor for the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. I'm recently new on board, but I also bring to the organization my background, which is I'm a former reader for the scholarship program. I was also a former scholarship administrator with my tribal community, and that is Zuni Pueblo, here in New Mexico. I received my Bachelor of Science degree in microbiology with minors in chemistry and American Indian Studies, and also am familiar with the different scholarships that are out there that students can apply for, and would be happy to definitely contribute to this presentation on references as it is an important process of the application process.
All right, so we'll go ahead and hop right in here. And again, should you have any questions as we're going through the webinar, feel free to post those in our comment section on the YouTube channel. So a little bit about our agenda. We're just going to go over the Gates Millennium Program in brief, talk about the registration process, and then provide some application tips. And at the very end, we'll just have a little portion titled Question and Answer. But again, we can fill those questions as we're going through the application itself, or excuse me, the presentation itself. So again, we're just talking about the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. Our actual office where this webinar is taking place is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are the partner organization, the American Indian Graduate Center Scholars, which administers the Gates Millennium Scholarship on behalf of American Indians and Alaska Natives from all across the country. We have a number provided below, fax number, as well as 2 web links that we thought were important. The first one, of course, is gmsp.org. And that's where you can find all the information about the application itself. This is where your students will apply for the Gates Scholarship, as well as yourself as a reference. You will also go to this link to start your registration process. The other link we have noted below is aigcs.org. Now this link is, again, going back to our office itself, the American Indian Graduate Center, and we would implore you just to check it out and see the other resources that are available. And we're going to take just a little bit of time to mention some of those items. But before we do, just wanted to, again, give a little bit of background for those of you who may not be aware. Bill and Melinda both set aside $1.6 billion. And through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, starting in 1999, they sought out to fund 20,000 students through the degree in college. So we're actually past the 17,000 mark, and we are wrapping the program up pretty quick as far as that 20,000 commitment goes. The physical format for our scholarship is that we operate from 4 separate physical offices located in different areas in the country. So the United Negro College Fund is the administrator of the scholarship, and they are headquartered in Washington, D.C. The Asian Pacific Islander Scholarship Fund is located in D.C. as well. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund is located in Los Angeles, California. And the American Indian Graduate Center Scholars, our office is located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we do have, separate staffs located in different offices, but we all work together to administer the Gates Millennium Scholarship on behalf of all of our respective ethnic communities. So we do have some crossover, and we do assist one another. If we're filling questions on behalf of other offices, we forward those along as appropriate, and we execute all of our outreach throughout the academic year in relation to our specific ethnic communities. And so with the American Indian Graduate Center Scholars.org website, we have some good opportunities here, some scholarships and fellowships. While we are predominantly set up for graduate level scholarships, we do have a couple at the undergrad level that your students might be interested in. So the point of this particular part is just to give you another website to look at with regard to your American Indian and Alaska Native students while they entertain other scholarships, whether it be their tribe or other scholarship websites. Keep AIGCS in mind, especially as they near their graduate school time, as we do provide funding at that level, whether they're pursuing their master's, PhD program, or professional program. A couple that might pique some of your students' interest is the Wells Fargo American Indian Scholarship for undergrads, as well as the Accenture American Indian Scholarship that's also for undergrads, or those that are seeking their bachelor's level degree. Now, I would ask all of you to, if you reference this information for your students, just to have them go in there, make sure that they read the criteria, and should they fit the list of prerequisites, they can certainly apply for those opportunities by clicking Apply Now, which is off to the right here. I have my cursor circling the Apply Now button. All individuals can go there and register and start their process there at aagcs.org. We also have an Other Opportunities link that's located in our green navigation bar at the top. This Other Opportunities gives some information about other scholarship search engines, internships, other programs, and the like. So that would be another good place to look if you're doing a college search or a scholarship search. And that's aagcs.org. Now, with regard to the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program, many of you being counselors, teachers, educators, community organizers are all, well, all of you may be aware of the criteria, but for those of you that are new, we'll just take a brief moment to talk about the eligibility criteria. So with the Gates Millennium Scholarship, the scholarship is set up to fund those that identify with the ethnic groups that are listed in our first bullet point. So we oftentimes let prospective applicants know that whatever ethnic background that they identify with, we would ask them to select the same in the Gates application process. For those that have or those that identify under multiple ethnicities, we would ask them to choose one and pursue the Gates Scholarship underneath that ethnic group. Unfortunately, the Gates Scholarship application is not set up to allow multiple ethnicities, so we do ask individuals to select one where appropriate. A personal experience of mine is I'm, as I mentioned earlier, American Indian, a member of the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe, as well as Guamanian. So I could have also qualified under the Pacific Islander ethnicity. When I applied under the American Indian application, or the American Indian category, and that's how I went through with my application. Now, the second bullet point is that we ask all applicants to be citizens of the United States or legal permanent residents. The third bullet point is we ask Gates applicants to have a 3.3 GPA, cumulative GPA on a 4.0 scale. And this GPA should cover their 9th grade through 12th grade year. And more specifically, the fall term of their senior year. Of course, for those of you that are wrapping up the fall term, that cumulative GPA won't be solidified until the end of the term. So being that the Gates Scholarship deadline is January 14th, 2015, every applicant now has some time to complete that fall term to improve their GPA if they need to. But for those that have less than a 3.3 GPA in the application, their applications will not proceed, as we need to see that 3.3 cumulative GPA in the application itself. Also, it's important as references, you nominators and recommenders, to know that we will not be requesting actual official transcripts from the high school until later on in the application process. So that might be important for you to know as you're counseling your students. The fourth bullet point is that all those that are applying for the Gates Scholarship should be entering college for the first time. They should be entering as a freshman degree-seeking college student in the fall of 2015. It may also be beneficial to share that we do allow students that are GED recipients to apply for the scholarship. Again, for those that have graduated from high school or or maybe completed their GED and did not enter college anytime after their either high school diploma or GED certificate, they can actually apply for the scholarship as well. So we do have some non-traditional students that are applying for the scholarship well after their high school years. I share that just because maybe some of you might know folks in your circles that are in that category, not necessarily high school graduating seniors, but those that have entered the workforce right out of high school or completed a GED well after their high school years. They can certainly be considered for the Gates Scholarship as long as they didn't enter college as a degree-seeking students prior to the application. Now, the fifth bullet point, since the scholarship is set up to allow students that have leadership and community service, all throughout the application process itself, we have different ways that students can show their leadership abilities through their participation in community service activities, extracurricular or otherwise. And the last bullet point on this screen is the Gates Scholarship is set up to fund outstanding students that display a high significant financial need. And the way that the scholarship identifies that is if the student is eligible to receive the Pell Grant through the FAFSA.ed.gov website. And we'll talk a little bit more about the details on that in just a moment. But I did provide the web link below, FAFSA.ed.gov, for those of you that can refer this to your students. In our webinar earlier today, we did share some items with our students, those that are considering applying, just some background information, kind of some things to keep in mind if they're going to be pursuing the FAFSA. So just in brief, these are some ideas that we put on the slide. One of the questions that we may receive is, well, if the FAFSA opens up on January 1 and the Gates Scholarship application is due on January 14th, is it the expectation that students have their FAFSA completed by the January 14th deadline? And the answer is, we will not actually request official FAFSA documentation until later on in the application cycle. So the student aid report will be requested later on in the coming weeks. So that's not actually going to be required at the time of application or before the January 14th deadline. We would, however, advise all students to make sure that they start the FAFSA as soon as possible after the January 1 application opening. And that way to avoid any deadline issues or avoid any delays in their FAFSA and financial aid processing. So preparation, being aware of the timeline, making sure that students provide the most accurate information with regard to their family's finances. It'd be important to note here that that all information, financial information at this point in the application process will be self-reported. So it's important, though, in that self-report that the families report the most accurate information to avoid any complications down the road. The other item that we also suggest is that families begin to discuss FAFSA questions with financial aid offices at colleges that they're considering. Now, of course, this might be a little early in the process, as many students have not decided on which college or university they'll be pursuing, but once that does occur, this would be an important thing to keep in mind. Again, for many of you, you might be aware that the FAFSA website has a number of help options available on their website, to include a live help chat option, which I've utilized a number of times for Gates applicants and Gates scholars. When they have FAFSA questions that I can't answer, I will either refer them to the live chat help option, or I will go in and ask some questions myself on their behalf. There's also FAFSA YouTube videos that are very helpful. And there's also the FAFSA forecaster that's located on the website itself. And we'll take a quick look at that now. If you go to the FAFSA website, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see an option for the FAFSA forecaster. So for those questions of whether or not a student may or may not qualify for the Pell Grant, we typically refer students to this tool on the FAFSA website just to get an estimate of what items they may or may not be eligible for. Now, for those students that are borderline or think they're borderline or just unsure whether or not they should apply, I always just advise them that it may be good to apply for the scholarship and find out later that you're eligible for the Pell Grant, which in turn, of course, makes you eligible for the Gates Scholarship, rather than not applying and finding out later that they're eligible. Some of the conversations that we get into is, oh, I don't want to start the application, the Gates application, if I'm just not going to be eligible anyway. At this point in the game, especially at this part of the academic year, unless they're well above the Pell eligible criteria, if they're close, there's so many factors involved to that eligibility for the Pell Grant. So I always hesitate to tell someone not to apply for the Gates Scholarship for that very reason. Secondary thought too is that the Gates application is one that you may find as a nominator recommender is one that is more extensive, typically more times than not, than other scholarship or college applications. Since this application process is accounting for non-cognitive variables, we have quite a bit of writing that's involved. We don't request ACT or SAT scores in the application website as far as a requirement. There's an option to put that in, but it's not a requirement at all. Therefore, the point being is that the practice of completing the Gates Millennium Scholarship would be beneficial to all students that do pursue it, and that they'll be knowing how to write a competitive essay, and they'll also be able to list a lot of, or many of their activities that they will be listing in other applications as well. So there's some intrinsic value to completing the Gates application, and certainly we're not asking folks just to apply just to apply. We're saying that it's a good practice for many high school students to pursue if they feel that it's something well worth their time. And again, below, further down, you'll see in the FAFSA website there is links to the YouTube videos that I mentioned prior. Definitely check those out. Now, also, for many of you that have worked with the scholarship, you're aware of many of the advantages to the Gates Scholarship versus other scholarships. So I just wanted to take some time to briefly cover those, and then we'll get into more of the meat of the reference side of the application process. But for those of your students that are going to be applying, should they become a GMS recipient, they will have possible 10 years of funding eligibility. And I have it broken down here below the first bullet point on how that pans out for folks. So the Gates Scholarship will fund up to 5 years at the bachelor's level. So you can complete your degree in 4 years or 5 years. Gates would cover a master's program up to 2 years. And depending on how many years they took at the undergrad level, they would have 3 to 4 years at the doctoral level in their program. So the total amount should equal 10 years is what a scholar could be awarded up to. All Gates scholars have the option to transfer from one school to the next. So if should a scholar be at a school and they just, for whatever reason, find that it's not a good fit for them, they can transfer. At the undergraduate level, students are able to study any field they would like. There's no limit to that. However, at the graduate level, doctoral level, we're asking that, the Gates Scholarship will be able to fund them in their master's or doctoral program in 7 funded areas. And we can talk about those later. The Gates Scholarship also offers a number of leadership development programs. So that's just an item that we let all prospective applicants know that the Gates Scholarship does allow for a number of different things for them to get involved in, to stay involved in the Gates community. Sort of the nuts and bolts of the scholarship, we just wanted to cover in brief, kind of the items that the Gates Scholarship does take into account. And these are the items. We use the term cost of attendance. And the Gates Scholarship is accounting for a student's tuition and fees, housing and meals, whether on or off campus, their books and supplies, personal expenses, transportation, and otherwise. And I'll just mention one last brief item on this slide. The Gates Scholarship is a last dollar scholarship. So after the student's other scholarships, Pell Grant, tribal aid, any other financial aid that they're receiving, once those scholarship items take care of their part of the cost of attendance, whatever's left over is what Gates will cover. So we have students that have their cost of attendance covered by all their scholarships, and their Gates award is literally zero because there's no unmet need afterwards. We also have scholars that have a high unmet need. Maybe they just applied for the Pell Grant and they have a unmet need of over $40,000. Gates has come in and covered that unmet need up to that amount. So there's no limit at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, there is some limits to what Gates will offer to cover that unmet need at that time. But you can see with this brief outline of the scholarship so far, it is a pretty extensive scholarship, and we have the ability to cover quite a bit of a student's cost of attendance at college. Now the student will submit their nominator form, their nominee form, which is item 3 on this slide. And then again, for the reference, item 1, a nominator will submit their portion, and a recommender will submit their portion under item 2. Now it's important it's important for you as a reference to understand which form you need to submit. I would say that year over year, this is one piece of confusion that can permeate our references out there. Sometimes we have nominators that are submitting recommender forms, and we have recommenders that are submitting nominator forms, and that can certainly complicate issues on the back end when you submit the incorrect form. Oftentimes leads to added time on your part, confusion and frustration. So to mitigate that, I want to take some time to outline which one is which, and for you as a nominator or recommender to know the difference and make sure that you submit the correct form. So the nominator form will be submitted by those of you that are educators. You could be a guidance counselor, teacher, a principal, anybody that knows the student's academic background well. We would ask you to complete the nominator form. This gives us a good background on the student's academic achievement throughout their grades 9 through 12. Now the recommender form is to be submitted by those of you that are community organizers, those of you that might be in a church or service-oriented program. You could also be a teacher sponsor of a school organization like National Honor Society. But this person has to have the ability to write well on the student's behalf regarding the student's community service and their leadership potential.
I'd also like to add that if you work for your tribal education department, this is probably a section that could also be for a scholarship representative or someone from the tribe who could speak on the student's behalf.
So those are probably the most important pieces with regard to the differences on the nominator and the recommender. Again, it's important that you submit the correct one just to alleviate extra time added to the process. At the very bottom, we wanted to just share with you that the Gates application is assessed on a holistic manner. So a student's application is actually going to be reviewed and scored not only on their academic achievement, which is item A below, but also their community service and leadership potential. So I always share while I'm in presentations across the country that, just because somebody has a 4.0 GPA doesn't necessarily mean that their application will proceed further than that 3.3 student. And it's also important for you as a counselor or reference to know that as well, that this application is a holistic application, and we're taking a variety of factors into account. So furthermore, we're not just taking the student's application into account when we assess the application itself. We're also looking at the recommender and the nominator submission. So it's so important, the background that you provide to us in your reference form, that it be also sharing some holistic information about the student as well. One point that I will say now and also share later on in the presentation is that we do sometimes get nominator and recommender forms that are left wanting. Maybe sometimes folks are rushing through the reference forms. Maybe they just don't have time to devote. I would say, if at all possible, to provide your best reference form submission on behalf of your student. Those forms are acknowledged. They are reviewed as well, just as much as the student's application process. And so just take your time and do your very best to give a background onto the student, to allow those that are reviewing the application to have a couple of different angles, a couple of different perspectives to know more about that student as we review their application package. Okay, I'm just taking a brief look over at our YouTube channel here on the live broadcast, and just to see if there's any questions that are being shared, and I don't see any fielded yet, so we'll go ahead and continue with the presentation. And here's what the gmsp.org website looks like when you dial in the website itself. Both students and nominators and recommenders will be clicking the same links to start their portion of the application. You'll see that the red arrows point to 2 different GMS application links. You as a recommender or nominator will click those links to start your process, just the same as a Gates Scholar applicant would in the website. You'll note below that the application deadline is January 14th. That is a Wednesday, and we will allow a complete submission to be given up until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, January 14th. So we do share that students need to be aware of the time zone change. So if you're if you're Eastern Standard Time, that's going to be 11:59. If you're Central Time, that'll be 10:59. Mountain Standard Time, 9:59, so on and so forth. So make sure that you're aware of that final deadline time, as we do have submissions all up to that final moment. And should a application remain incomplete at that time, it will not be accepted. All incomplete submissions will no longer proceed in the Gates application process. So again, we just share that with you, nominators and recommenders, just so you follow up with your students, make sure that they're completing their portion, or that they have the other portions completed. All 3 parts: the nominee, the student's part, the nominator, and the recommender forms. It certainly would be unfortunate for one or multiple parts of the application process to have completed parts, but just have one lacking form, and that cause an incomplete submission. So it's just important to know the dynamics of that deadline time, and hope that all students are able to complete all 3 parts prior to that time. So once you click GMS application, it'll bring you to this page where you'll click the blue button at the top titled Write a Reference. We're going to go through this list of 12 items on how a reference will submit their reference form. Now, in my past experience, I found that this has been quite an item of frustration for some references, as the website has, for whatever reason, has led them to the wrong place. So I want to clear up some of those, clear up some of that confusion, and maybe dispel some of those myths out there with regard to the application itself. So that way, everyone's clear and on the same page. But this is a list that we're going to go ahead and go through, and we'll walk you through it step by step. Of course, if those of you want a list of this, we can certainly provide that to you on request. So after you click write a reference, you're going to be taken to this page where you'll see that you have the ability to log on. If you've already registered, this is where you'll log on by providing your email address and password. Otherwise, you'll want to click the register link in the top portion of this box. Again, it's register. You'll click that and it'll take you to the next page titled register. At the bottom, it's important for you as a reference to go ahead and select the reference checkbox below and then click start registration. Every so often we'll have references that incorrectly select the student box, and that of course will create complications down the road. So just make sure you have the reference box checked at this point and then click start registration. Once you register, you'll be taken to a page like this after you log in. You have the ability to click reference landing page at the top, and what this will do will take you to this very page that we're on. It will allow you to view and update your profile here off to the left, and it will also allow you to start new forms off to the right. So for some of you that have already registered in the website last year or years prior, you should be able just to log on to the GMS login page and resume just like you have in years past. Now, two important areas on this page that I want to direct you to is the Start New Form button, as well as your reference forms at the bottom. Now, for those of you that are going to go in as a nominator or recommender and start a new form, you'll, of course, click the Start New Form button. Now, should you come back to this page later and have already started a form, I want to direct you to the Your Reference Forms below. If you've already started a reference form for somebody, that student's name is going to show down below under Student Name, and you can simply click Edit, and you can go there and continue where you left off on a particular student's form. What we've seen in the past is sometimes references will click Start New Form, even though they've already started a form. And what happens is you create duplicate records, or you're not able to access the student's form. Now, creating duplicate records, of course, can complicate things on behalf of the student and for yourself, because you'll create multiple reference pages, and then it will be difficult for the Gates application on the backside to make sure that we know which one is which. So again, if you're starting a new form for a new student, click Start New Form. If you already started a form, make sure that you go down to Your References form below and click an already started form there. Now, for those of you that start a new form and you click that button, it will take you to this next dialog next dialog box. We'll ask you to click Search for a Student. Now, each student, once they start their process, will be given a registration ID. You'll want to make sure that you have that ID available. As you can see, after you press Search for a Student, you'll be asked to provide that very registration ID. You'll be asked to provide a first name and also a last name. And this will allow the Gates Scholarship application to make sure that they connect your reference form to the proper student form. Once you enter the correct registration ID, first and last name of your student, you'll then be given an option to select the correct student on the next dialog box. Every so often, you'll have students with multiple names that match each other for whatever reason, but maybe the registration ID separates them. Here will allow you to distinguish the two. So you can select the student that matches the information for your student that you're going to submit the reference for. Once you click Select Student, it'll take you to a dialog box that asks you to specify the program that your student is applying for. Being that this website is set up to provide this very process for multiple applications into separate programs, simply type into this box the Gates Millennium Scholars. That way, you're able to identify your student with the exact scholarship program that they're seeking. Once you enter Gates Millennium Scholars, it'll take you to this dialog box, which will allow you to confirm that, yes, your student is applying for the Gates Millennium Scholars program. Simply select this program, and you will be asked a couple of default questions. Complete those, and then you'll have the ability to then select which form you would like to submit, whether it's the nominator form or the recommender form. Now, again, as mentioned before, this is where we've had some confusion in the past. Every so often, a recommender will incorrectly submit a nominator form, and vice versa. A nominator will select and submit a recommender form incorrectly. So here, we'll just make sure that you know which one you're submitting. If you don't know, just click one of those arrow circles, and it will let you know a little bit of background about which is which. So for the nominator, if you click that arrow circle, it'll have a little drop down about what exactly a nominator is. So the purposes of this example, this is what you're going to see if you click that arrow circle. The same thing will occur if you select the recommender form. But if you're the nominator, you simply verify the information is correct. You're going to be the nominator, and then you'll click the button off there to the right, Create Nominator Form. And then once you select that, you'll be asked to just verify the information and make sure that you click the box below that states, I have selected the correct student, scholarship program, and reference form, and I'm ready to begin writing about the student. Once you do that, just click Proceed to Form. And then it will take you on to your portion of the application. So you can see at the top here, this is the form that's set up for the nominator. And then right below that, it does denote which student you're going to be submitting this form for. You'll see a number of blue tabs at the top: Personal, About the Student, Reference Details, Essays, Your Signature Form, and the Summary page. These are pretty user-friendly, and they're intuitive. So, and especially for the nominator and recommender, it's a lot more simple for you to submit your form versus the nominee, the student, just because of the content and the amount of information we're requesting from the student. So you'll see that this is pretty straightforward. I wanted to take you to the nominator's recommender box here under the Essays tab. This is where you as a nominator, and for the recommender, you'll have a separate box. But this is essentially where you'll share your information in 100 words or less about the student. Again, we want to advise you to make sure that you do your very best with regard to your student. The student's certainly going to be doing their level best on submitting their part of the application. Being that the nominator and the recommender portions are also assessed, we would just ask you to make sure that you do your very best on this part on behalf of the student. What we've seen in this box sometimes is, again, we understand that counselors, teachers, all of you out there that are submitting these forms are doing a number of other things. And so we understand that everyone's busy. But again, we want to make sure that you have the space available here to do your level best to, on behalf of the student, make sure that you're sharing with the scholarship reviewers a little bit more information about the student to give us a better ability to assess the student holistically across their peer group across the nation. You, of course, have the ability to press Save and Continue at the bottom if you don't have the time to do it all at once. So you can always do that up until that January 14th deadline if you need to break up your time in this application process.
Coming from a reader perspective, this is Josh. This is important because it just gives us another set of eyes and also an assessment of the student. Student is doing their job in writing their essay, speaking about themselves, and then with the nominator and recommender portion, this gives us another view of the student. So this is where we ask that you do your very best at speaking on behalf of the student.
And once again, you'll be able to save and continue and edit your submission as you go along. For many of you, this has been something that you do on a regular practice, so it's going to be pretty straightforward for you to go ahead and submit your thoughts on the particular student. For those of you that are new references, new nominators, or new recommenders, you all will probably take just a little bit of time to think about how you want to describe your student or students. And again, we have a instructions link. If you want a little bit more background of what the Gates application is looking for, you can certainly click that link and it will give you some background information on this dialog box. Again, you do have up to 100 words to share here. So as they say, choose your words wisely. Now, once you've started that nominator form, you'll see that it's going to show up on your My References landing page. So every time you log back into the your reference login, you'll see the list of students that you've submitted or started a reference form for. So again, let's say that you were completing a nominator form for Maddie Marie Bug. You can of course go back in if you're not complete and just click the view/edit link off to the right. Okay. Once again, here's a list of the steps that we took. All portions of the application will need to be submitted in order for a complete application to be accepted. And just to give you an idea of what the student's going to be looking at, they will have their separate landing page where they can go in and see the status of their application as a whole. At the top, you'll see the scholarship that they're applying for, and the first pink circle that I want to direct you to is the package status. It's that top circle. In this particular student's record, you'll see the word complete. And the reason why it's complete is because below, you'll see that all three parts of the application are submitted. The student's application has a green check mark next to submit or underneath submitted. The reference or recommender form is also submitted, denoted by a green arrow underneath that box. And the nominator form is also submitted. You'll see the submission date next to each of one of them. So if you're curious that whether or not your student has a complete submission or not, just ask that student to go in and check their scholarship application status page, and they can review this information. One last piece on this one is every so often we have students that will have multiple nominator forms submitted or multiple recommender forms. We ask the student to go in and make sure that the correct submissions are submitted, and that if there is multiple submissions, to make sure they select the one that they would like to be active. So again, back to one of the common errors that does occur. Sometimes the nominator will submit a recommender form and vice versa. This gives the student ability to make that correction on their side should that occur. However, if you do submit the incorrect form, you'll actually have to go back into the website, select the correct form, and then submit. So that's not just as easy to change a recommender's form to a nominator form, because each form has separate sets of questions and is asking you as a reference to submit a separate type of answer on behalf of the student. Okay. Now, we just wanted to briefly take some time as we're concluding the this webinar for you, just to kind of take a brief moment to give a little bit of background on what the student is seeing, and specifically what they'll be submitting for their essays, and to give you a little bit of background as a counselor or as a reference to know exactly what they're going to be completing. Should you be assisting them or providing them some feedback on their application itself? This gives you a little bit of background on the philosophies that the Gates application is set up for. So you can see that, again, in the students portion of the application, they certainly have a few more tabs than you did as a reference. You'll see at the top, the blue tabs list everything that they'll be asked to submit in their application itself. We have on this screen the essays tab selected. You'll see at the top there's essay 1 through essay 9. Every student is going to be required to complete at least essays 1 through 8. For those that are GED recipient, we'll be asking them to submit that 9th essay, which has the respective information and questions there. But all students will be asked to submit information under essays 1 through 8. And this, of course, allows the assessment of them as a person, as a student, their leadership and extracurricular activities, their community service, will really bring together their application as a whole, where they'll be listing their academic record, their leadership activities, and other tabs. This is where they'll actually be able to write about who they are as a person and tell us a story of who exactly they are, and also will allow us, it will allow them to highlight their attributes in their writing as to why they're the best student and why they should be selected for the Gates Scholarship Program. In each of these dialog boxes, they'll have up to 1,000 words to answer their question. In this essay 1, simply ask the student to discuss the subjects in which you have excelled, discuss subject in which you excel or have excelled. To what factors do you attribute your success? So this, of course, can be answered in a brief amount of space, but we're asking that students to be creative, write on topics that they're passionate about or motivated about, and this allows them to really come across as a good applicant for the scholarship program. What is it that makes them tick? Tell us the story. Maybe they want to reference in this particular essay some of their education that they've listed in the education tab. Maybe there was a leadership item that they listed in that tab that they can connect to in this particular essay. So it's good as they're writing and answering each of these essays to make sure that they bring the whole application together. But again, this essay is going to be open-ended. They can talk about anything they would like to with regard to what they've excelled at, to give us an idea of where their passions are located, where their motivations lie.
For this section, I normally like to express to the students that if they could stick to at least 2 or 3 favorite subjects and talk about, what factors attribute to their success, why are they good at these particular subjects. And some can be very straightforward and answer the question, but others can add more detail, and it's good to try to have that detail, because again, we're looking at what students do to be successful.
And for many of you that have worked with your students before, oftentimes, I would say at this point in the game, for many, at least American Indian Alaska Native students, might not be in the habit of bragging on themselves. They might feel stumped that they don't have a whole lot to write because they just don't feel comfortable writing about themselves. So I would just say, as a reference, it might be helpful if you're assisting a student, just to encourage them to be forthright with their accomplishments. Give them the confidence that they need to hear that will allow them to really write about their successes in their life up to this point. And just to highlight a second essay in this portion, essay 2 asks the following question: discuss the subjects in which you have had difficulty. What factors do you believe contributed to your difficulties? How have you dealt with them so that they will not cause problems for you again? In what areas have you experienced the greatest improvement, and what problem areas remain? So again, in this particular essay, it's open-ended on what the student wants to write about as to which subjects they've struggled with. But the point here is that we want to understand from the student's perspective that they first self-identify that they struggle through certain things, but they also have the ability to navigate those issues to their point in their life thus far. When we think about college and that process. It's going to be, of course, a new environment and a new experience for most, if not all, students. So it's important that they share with us their ability to navigate their problem-solving situations. So maybe they have the ability to note that they're struggling in a certain area, but what are the steps that they took to overcome that obstacle? That's what we want to know. And with regard to SA1, this is kind of the other side of the coin, where we want to see not only their successes that they can identify, but now are they able to identify the problem? Are they able to identify a solution? And then are they also able to identify how to implement that solution? And at the end of the game, at least in this question, are they able to assess where they can continue to improve going forward? So that's a little bit of background on this particular essay question. And you'll be able to, again, I think from your role, if you are assisting a particular student, just encourage them through this. Make sure that they're answering all parts of the question that are listed. And if they're facing a writer's block, it will be your role, if you are assisting that student, just to continue to be an encouraging voice and remind them, you know, what the outcomes on the back end of this application process will be. From a little bit of experience with talking to students and also talking to recommenders and nominators, the feedback that we oftentimes get is that students can, you know, again, looking at the where we're at in the academic year, being at the very end of the fall term, they're going to be on break, they're going to come back, things are going to be so busy with their academics that oftentimes these scholarship applications can fall on the back burner for them and get pushed in the back of their mind. So again, your role can be one of an encourager, just a reminder to let them know, hey, I submitted your reference for your Gates application. Make sure that you finish your part and don't lose sight of that end goal. So being that persistent voice in the student's ear. All right. Just wanted to take a brief moment to kind of show other parts of the application, and just wanted to highlight the leadership tab, where it allows all students to list at least up to 6 leadership roles. And we wanted to take just a moment to kind of talk about that, as this will apply through other tabs in the application itself. So with regard to leadership, we can always think of those typical items that students might be involved in: student council, maybe sports, other extracurricular activities like Boy Scouts. We have 4-H members, so Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, I should take note of that. But this particular list of leadership can also include other things beyond what might happen at school, or those typical things that we think of in our minds with regard to leadership. We have a number of applicants that are involved in church or other community organizations like Kiwanis Club. Sometimes folks are involved in the Masons Club in town or in your city, Boys and Girls Club. So those are other items where a student might experience leadership. So certainly encourage your students to don't forget those. Furthermore, with regard to the American Indian Alaska Native cohort, you know that your students may be involved in other activities that will help them practice their leadership attribute. So it could be ceremonies, it could be annual festivals. It might even be some more of those type of settings where students might not be too open about talking about. I always like to share with them if they feel comfortable talking about a certain experience to provide that. If they don't, of course, don't share anything that they're not willing to allow others to read. Or maybe there's certain things, parameters where they can't put in writing certain types of ceremonies. So we did want to mention that, you know, there are certain things that students can write. This list here is what we've seen other Gates applicants write that kind of come into that non-traditional category. But certainly students attain a leadership attribute here in these type of settings.
And as a former reader, this is another strong point for an applicant if they're able to speak on behalf of their traditional cultural doings within their community. as indicated, these roles do hold a significant role within their culture, and it's okay to talk about it if the student feels comfortable and if it's um, within reason. And we do like to hear what students say in terms of their role and how it's shaped them as a person.
And again, with regard to this particular tab, the leadership tab, we're just kind of highlighting some background info with regard to how prior scholars or current scholars have applied for the scholarship in the past. So again, for those typical items of leadership, certainly have your students supply those in their lists. And again, we just wanted to bring forth to light some other ways that they can display their leadership activities. And I do understand we're right up on that hour mark, so we are going to take, actually this is pretty much the end of our slide, or the last slide that we have and the end of our presentation. So we'll be concluding in the next few moments. But just some last final thoughts that we wanted to leave you nominators and recommenders out there. Again, we'd ask you to do your best on behalf of your student with regard to your reference form. Make sure that you write well. Don't be brief. Share as much info as you can on the student. This can only help the particular student that you're writing for. Also, again, you're going to be speaking on behalf of the students and highlighting their successes. It's going to be helpful to also allow the scholarship reviewers to understand kind of the student's process on navigating issues as well, as that's important. So feel free to talk about how your particular student overcomes their obstacles. And there's also other things we've encountered in the past where a particular applicant may receive a less than acceptable grade in a particular class. If you as the nominator or recommender are aware of that particular situation, sometimes we have students that encounter family problems, family crisis. If you want to share a little bit about that to give some background, you can certainly do that, and that'll allow the reviewer to give more context about maybe a dip in their academics somewhere along the line. Because we do understand that this occurs, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the student's a bad student. It just means that that student went through maybe a tough time in their life. Maybe there was a loss of a family member. There's a variety of things, but that will we want to give you the latitude to go ahead and share a little bit about that to give the reviewers some background. Also, again, if it's within your, if it's within yourself to make sure to be that persistent voice in your student's ear, it's certainly going to be helpful for you to follow up as the deadline approaches. I want to share something important that, in years past, we've had situations where schools were snowed in, internet cut down that last final day, power went out, you name it. There's certain things that come up, family, again, even family crises. With regard to the deadline on the 14th, there's no exceptions to that deadline day. And the best way to mitigate problems on that final day is to make sure that you have your application submitted all 3 parts prior to that time. Again, remember you have the ability to go back and edit after you submitted. But just make sure you have that part submitted well before that January 14th deadline, and just be a constant voice in your students' ear to make sure that they get that done as well. Again, we would hate for something to happen on the last minute, but again, the best thing that one could do is have your application submitted well in advance of that time. And the last point on this slide before we go to our questions on the YouTube channel is make sure that you complete your correct form, nominator versus recommender. I would have to say that this has probably been the largest item of frustration for nominators and recommenders. So make sure you're looking at your drop-down menus, kind of take your time through it, ensure that you are in fact a nominator or a recommender, and that you're submitting that respective form. So make sure you request that registration ID from your students, have it written down. That way you know that your submission is going to the correct student. And we want to go ahead and end with that in regard to this particular webinar, and we're pretty much done. We just want to take the the last final moments to fill the questions that have been posted on the YouTube channel. So I want to go ahead and start with the first one. Actually, we have a number of them here. So the question is from Sarah Ortiz, which has submitted a number of comments. The question is regarding nominator versus recommender. Okay. Is there actually, we're going to go with this question. Is there any chance that GMS will receive a continuing investment from the foundation after the final point? So thank you for the question. And this is actually one that comes up on occasion since at the announcement of the what they call the sunsetting of the program. So is there going to be a continuing investment? I'll be able to provide a link to the GMS Foundation article that kind of speaks holistically to this question, but the Gates Foundation set out to fund 20,000 students, and being that we're getting up to that final commitment, that will complete the Gates Millennium Scholars Program as we know it. The foundation has, however, talked about continuing a scholarship or continuing with scholarship for students, and so that's going to continue on. The details on how that will come to be will be forthcoming, but I'll go ahead and provide a link in the comments below to that particular Gates article that will shed some more light to that question. The next question we'll go ahead and field is, out of the 1,000 applicants selected, how many are American Indian or Alaska Native? So year over year, we select 1,000 applicants from across the nation. The breakdown of that is 150 are American Indian and Alaska Native. Another 150 are Asian Pacific Islander. 350 are Hispanic American. And the final 350 are African American or Black, which completes a total 1,000. So that's sort of how it's broken down from year after year. Now go ahead and go to the question regarding nominators versus recommender. The question is, I manage the Native Education Program for a school district. I can speak well on the applicant's leadership potential, community service, and their academic background. I want to submit a letter which will be of the most benefit to a student and speak to as many facets of the student's potential as is possible. Can you provide guidance here? I would say that certainly in some areas a nominator and a person can provide a nominator, a really good nominator form as well as a recommender form, and probably could speak to all facets that are asked of both forms. I would also say that if there's it is helpful to have more than one perspective be submitted. So if there's a nominator or a person that can complete the nominator form and a different person to complete the recommender form, what that does, it does provide two different perspectives on that student, and it would in some regard enrich that student's application as a whole. Now, some students are in areas where there's just not a nominator and there's just not a recommender in two separate people. In very limited circumstances, we would advise that one person provide both. So it's not that it's restricted for that to occur. I would just say that it would probably be better if you had two different people. And I'd probably refer to Josh on this as well, on his thoughts on the item.
As mentioned before, I was a scholarship administrator and a number of times served as one of the nominators. It does help to give that perspective from the community, from the student's angle in terms of their leadership, their community service, or just some background into a particular item. One student comes to mind where he talked about being involved culturally in the traditional customs within the tribe, and I came in from that angle to explain the meaning behind the cultural doings, but also supported him in the amount of time it took, the amount of dedication, commitment, so forth, as it related to the application, leadership, community service. All those shape the student to be who they are. And as a member of the community, I was speaking on that behalf, sort of the bigger picture perspective of what the student was going through. So on that end, that's where a tribal education person or a individual involved in the schools that administers an education program or connects tribal students or tribal liaison or so forth, that's definitely an area that they can write on behalf of the student.
So I hope that kind of gives some good context for the, for an answer to that question. And we do actually want to just personally thank you, Sarah, for posing your questions. I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of them, but I would have to say thus far you've covered a good swath of questions that we do receive on behalf of references, just in the 3 that we've already answered. So thank you for that. I'll go ahead and go to your other question, or your 4th question here. Regarding American Indian and Alaska Native students who are invested in attending an accredited 4-year tribal college or university to obtain a bachelor's degree before going to a mainstream university to pursue their master's, PhD, or professional degree, are they eligible to apply for GMS? So the answer to that question is yes. We have students that apply for the Gates Scholarship and pursue their first couple of years, or sometimes the first couple of years at a community college. They'll get their associate's degree. They might also pursue education at a tribal college. One that comes to mind that you might be aware of is Haskell Indian Nations University. Others out there, even the main point to this answer, though, is that the Gates Scholarship is going to fund any student at an accredited university that's accredited by a regional accrediting agency. So we do fund scholars at tribal colleges. We do fund scholars at community colleges in preparation of their bachelor's degree, as well as their master's and PhD program. So the answer to the question is yes. They're eligible to apply for GMS, and we as GMS staff members are available to counsel them through transfers, counsel them through preparing for a competitive graduate school application, and that sort of thing. So we do have scholars at tribal colleges and community colleges as well. Your next question is, if a student applies for a scholarship while still in high school, is denied, then matriculates, but does not attend a university or college after graduation, are they eligible to reapply for GMS? If so, is there a limit to how long they have to apply after matriculation? Are they rendered ineligible if they attend a community college? Okay, that's a good question. So if a particular high school student or student in general applies for the scholarship and they are denied, they do have the ability to reapply the next year, provided that they don't matriculate in between those 2 application times. So there's a couple of thoughts that I just wanted to say in regards to that. And sometimes a student might see the advantages the Gates Scholarship provides, and every so often you have those that kind of put all their eggs in one basket, and they want to get the Gates Scholarship, and for 1 year put on hold their college pursuits. I certainly I would say to a scholar or a student that's considering that to really look at the bigger picture on what they're trying to do. First of all, the Gates Scholarship, if they're denied it the first time, there's no guarantee that they apply the second year and get accepted. So that applying a second time is not guaranteed. And so it's important to kind of look at that risk as they look at the rest of their life. And, again, the Gates Scholarship is one of many opportunities out there. There's a variety of ways that students can pursue their academics by way of other scholarship opportunities, but I just would hesitate to advise a student to put their essentially put their life on hold for a year in hopes that they're going to apply for the Gates Scholarship a second time and get accepted. I just think the risk is too great to pursue there. Of course, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But again, I think there's a bigger picture there to consider. Also, I'll let Josh just mention another item with regard to that.
Yeah, there is such a thing called a postgraduate year, which is essentially a fifth year high school student would basically be working toward a second high school diploma, and most postgraduate years are offered at boarding schools such as Exeter out on the East Coast or Hotchkiss. These schools are definitely beneficial in terms of preparing students academically for the college level coursework that they're going to be experiencing when they are in college. And it does give them extra year to prepare academically, but it also gives them that year again to, in a sense, reapply for college admissions, also looking at other scholarships. And I also echo Gabriel's perspective and advisement on really looking at applying for the scholarship and putting their life on hold. The PG year definitely keeps them moving forward in terms of getting prepared academically and getting another shot, but it's a huge risk a student is taking because they are not guaranteed that they will get the Gates Scholarship.
And then just to answer the other parts of your question there. So again, well, first of all, are they eligible to reapply for GMS? And the answer was yes. But again, considering the big picture, I think we have to be very careful as mentors, as educators, to ensure that we're keeping the student's best interests in mind, and not to keep hopes out for a second chance at the application. You know, if they're going to pursue college without Gates, that's certainly fine. But to look at other ways to do that, again, Josh mentioned the PG year essentially as a tool to maybe look at ways that a student can, you know, add a fifth year to increase their experience or their academics, essentially being that fifth year in high school. Again, the risk versus reward is something to consider. The other part of your question was, is there a limit to how long they have to apply after matriculation? So this one is, you know, if they matriculate in a college as a degree-seeking student, that's actually going to disqualify them to apply for Gates, since one of the criterion is that they not do that prior to their application. So if they matriculate at a university level, college level, and to the last part of your question, at the community college, they will be ineligible for the Gates Scholarship going forward. And that's, again, by design of how the scholarship was created. So it's just important to mind that. Again, Sarah, I hope I was able to answer your question. We were able to answer your question there. Looks like we have the last question on YouTube, and we'll go ahead and fill this and conclude. The last question is, will both today's GMS application workshop and webinar and PowerPoint be available after today? Can I download the webinar and also receive the PowerPoint and share it with our college and career specialists? And we're actually going to provide a recording of this webinar on our website at aigcs.org/GMS webinar. And also we'll post on this area as well, that recording also. You can request the webinar itself. If you look back to our last and final shot, gms@aigcs.org. If you're interested in any information we shared, a list of how to register as a reference, webinars, recordings, certainly pose that question at gms@aigcs.org, and we'll be diligent to get that information to you. Again, this final slide has our toll-free number, which you can always contact to reach us. As we get closer to the deadline day, it'll be beneficial for you to know that we're going to be working under extended hours. So especially once we get back from break, January 5th and going forward up to that deadline, we'll actually be working late into the evenings. So you can, of course, call us toll-free at that number provided. Contact us at gms@aagcs.org, or we have a list of our professional email addresses of all of our GMS staff members, so you can contact us individually there as well. Again, my name is Gabriel Bell. We have Josh Lucio. He's also listed on this final screen. Leander and Aaron also work in the Gates Scholarship Program. Joan Curry is our Chief Operating Officer, and Krista Moy is the Director of Financial Aid and Student Services. We all are going to be willing to assist you with any questions that you have, as well as moving forward. If you are interested in an outreach presentation, you can request that at gms@aagcs.org, or you can contact Aaron Griego, who's listed on this page. And we'd be more than happy to consider coming out to your area if we haven't already, and doing just that. So it looks like we're right up on an hour and 20 minutes. We've done our webinar workshop on how to write a reference, provided some good details on the application process itself, and answered all of our questions on this YouTube channel. So I want to personally thank Josh Lucio for accompanying me and doing this particular website and providing his information, as I think it's crucial, being that he's been part of the review process. Now being on the GMS staff side, he's able to talk and participate in these type of webinars with some really good information. Again, Sarah, I see your last comment. We do thank you as well, and we hope that we can do some more of these going forward. So stand by for additional webinars. I wanted to end also to let you know that all of your students that register in the website at gmsp.org, we'll be actually following up with them with additional resources, essay tips and suggestions, application hints and suggestions. So again, encourage your students to register. You can register as reference, and we hope that all of you are able to navigate the website fine, submit your application well in advance of the deadline, and we'll possibly be looking at your submissions on the back end. So happy holidays to you all, and we hope that you have a happy new year, and please let us know if you have any questions beyond this point. Thank you again.
Thank you again, everyone, for taking part and listening. We appreciate your patience.